In the heart of Chicago, inside the luxurious Meridian restaurant where golden chandeliers glimmer above marble floors, power is measured not in money, but in how loudly one can command a room. At the center table sits Khalil al-Rashid, a billionaire Arab CEO, surrounded by associates who nod at every word he speaks. But the moment that would define his legacy isn't sealed in a boardroom. It begins with a glass of water. What kind of person takes 10 minutes for a simple order? Khalil's voice cuts through the elegant silence. His hand slams the crystal glass onto the table, scattering ice like fragments of humiliation. Every head turns. Cameras discreetly rise from pockets. The target of his anger, Amara Williams, stands motionless, the pitcher steady in her trembling hands. She doesn't respond. Her silence, though calm, burns more than any reply could. I asked for sparkling, not still, Khalil sneers, switching languages with a smirk. His tone drips with superiority as he mocks her in Arabic, assuming no one around could possibly understand. This stupid girl probably doesn't even know what she's holding. Laughter flickers across the table, uneasy, forced. But beneath the surface, something is shifting. Because Amara understands every single word. The word, stupid, hits her like an echo of centuries, but instead of reacting with anger, her eyes sharpen. She places the pitcher down gently, like a queen setting a crown. The air around her stills. In that suspended silence, a storm gathers. Then she speaks. Sir, she begins softly, her tone respectful yet razor-sharp. I apologize if I seem stupid to you. The guests smirk, expecting defeat. But what follows makes the entire restaurant freeze. But perhaps you'd prefer I take your order in Arabic? The words roll from her tongue flawlessly, pure Lebanese dialect, polished and proud. Not a trace of hesitation. Not a single accent misplaced. The laughter dies instantly. The color drains from Khalil's face as he realizes the impossible. She speaks his language, his exact dialect, with the confidence of someone who has lived it. Every diner feels it. The power in the room just shifted. The man who thought he ruled this table is now cornered by his own arrogance. His associates avert their eyes, pretending not to exist. The sound of a single fork falling onto porcelain seems thunderous. Would you prefer I continue in Arabic, Egyptian, or perhaps Moroccan? Amara adds, switching effortlessly between dialects. I noticed your accent, Lebanese, correct? Khalil's fingers loosen. The glass slips, shattering on the marble floor, the sound slicing through the air like judgment itself. For the first time in years, he's speechless. Amara leans slightly forward, her voice calm but carrying a quiet power that silences the entire restaurant. And for future reference, she says evenly, insulting someone in another language doesn't make you clever, it only reveals what kind of person you truly are. Every conversation stops. Even the music fades as if the universe itself is listening. The billionaire who walked in commanding the room now sits small beneath the weight of his own words. Khalil stammers, reaching for an apology that won't come. Amara simply straightens her shoulders, takes the pitcher, and refills another table's glass. Dignity intact. Power restored. In that single moment, the internet would later say, a man lost his empire, and a waitress found her crown. The cameras captured everything, but what they didn't capture was the thought flickering in Amara's eyes. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of someone waiting for the right moment to speak. The video opens to a quiet aftermath. The restaurant hums again, but the energy feels different, like every whisper carries Amara's name. What moments ago was humiliation has turned into a living legend spreading from table to table. Khalil, the once untouchable so, now sits small and silent as Amara gracefully walks away, her dignity sharper than any weapon. She doesn't glance back. She doesn't need to. Half an hour later, the lunch rush slows. The restaurant manager, Derek Morrison, catches up to her near the counter, still processing what he witnessed. How many languages was that? He blurts out. Amara looks up, a faint smile brushing her lips. Fluently? 7. Conversationally? Maybe 12 on a good day. Derek's expression freezes somewhere between awe and disbelief. The world outside doesn't know her story yet, but soon they will. For now, the truth lingers quietly between the smell of espresso and the glint of half-empty glasses. Amara isn't just a waitress. She's a woman with a PhD in linguistics from Northwestern University, specializing in cross-cultural communication, a woman who once dreamed of teaching at global conferences, not refilling water at lunchtime. But when her field dried up after the recession, she took the only job that kept her student loans at bay. It wasn't pride that brought her here, it was perseverance. Every order she takes, every polite smile she gives, isn't just service, it's training. She listens to accents, observes gestures, maps cultural patterns, and learns more from this dining floor than any university classroom could offer. Every night, she studies at home, Arabic news broadcasts, Korean dramas, Japanese business talk shows, Italian podcasts, each word sharpening her craft. Her grandmother's voice echoes in her mind like a compass. Languages are bridges, Amara. And bridges don't just connect words, they connect hearts. That belief has guided her since childhood. Growing up on Chicago's South Side, in a family that couldn't afford language schools, she learned through borrowed library books and late-night radio. She practiced French with a Haitian neighbor, Mandarin with the owner of a corner shop, and Spanish with street vendors who became her friends. When others saw limits, she saw doors waiting to open. That day at the restaurant, she didn't just defend herself. She defended every invisible worker who had ever been underestimated. Her calm wasn't silence, it was strategy. Because she knew something that Khalil never did, real intelligence doesn't scream to be noticed. It waits, listens, and strikes only when the truth will echo loudest. As she wipes down the counter, Derek's phone vibrates. His eyes widen. The clip, the confrontation with Khalil, has already hit social media. Someone recorded it from a nearby table. The caption reads, "Waitress speaks 7 languages, destroys arrogance in his own dialect." Within minutes, thousands of views become millions. The hashtag hidden genius begins to rise. The comments pour in. This woman deserves a TED Talk. That Seo just got humbled by grace. Protect this queen at all costs. Amara scrolls briefly, her expression unreadable. Fame wasn't her goal, but something inside her stirs, not pride, but purpose. For the first time in years, her knowledge isn't invisible. And somewhere across the city, Khalil watches the same video replaying on loop. The woman he insulted now commands more respect than his entire company's PR department. The humiliation he intended has turned into her coronation. But for Amara, this isn't about revenge. It's about revelation, the beginning of something far greater than a viral clip. Because what no one knows yet is that this waitress is about to change how the world does business, one conversation at a time. The scene fades with her whispering quietly to herself, a reminder from her grandmother she's carried for years. They'll remember the insult today, but soon they'll remember the lesson. By the next morning, the world knows her name. The video, just 40 seconds long, has crossed 5 million views overnight. On every screen from TikTok to CNN, the same moment replays in endless loops. A billionaire's arrogance, shattered by a waitress's perfect Arabic. The internet crowns her the polyglot queen. But Amara Williams doesn't wake up to glory. She wakes up to noise. Her phone buzzes nonstop. Strangers are tagging her in posts, journalists are hunting for interviews, and hashtags multiply by the hour. Hashtag hidden genius, hashtag cultural power, hashtag the waitress who spoke back. The restaurant's phone lines crash under calls from reporters. Even Khalil's corporation releases a vague statement about unfortunate misunderstandings, which only fuels more speculation. Inside the restaurant, the energy has shifted. Every customer looks at Amara like she's a celebrity, whispering her name as she passes. A woman at table 7 discreetly records her again. A local news crew waits outside the door. Derek, her manager, meets her at the counter, his voice low but urgent. "You've become the story," he says. And not just any story, the story. Amara keeps working. She serves coffee, clears tables, smiles politely. But beneath that calm exterior, a storm brews. For years, she's studied languages to understand people. Now, the world wants to understand her. Later that afternoon, Derek pulls her aside, holding his phone. "Look at this," he says. The clip has reached 12 million views. The comments are everywhere, linguists praising her fluency, those calling her an example of cultural intelligence, activists celebrating her composure under pressure. But not all attention is kind. A few skeptics question her background. Some ask if it was staged. Others accuse her of playing the victim for fame. Fame, Amara realizes, doesn't just spotlight truth, it also exposes every shadow. "Do you have any idea what this means?" Derek asks, pacing. "Our company has been bleeding money trying to expand overseas. We've hired experts for cultural training. None of them could do what you did in one conversation." Amara shakes her head. "I just did my job," she says quietly. But Derek isn't listening. His mind races with possibility. "No, you did more than that. You translated respect, something money can't buy. What if you didn't just serve tables? What if you helped rebuild how we do international business?" The suggestion lingers in the air, heavy and thrilling. For the first time, Amara's education feels like more than a forgotten line on a resume. Maybe this moment isn't an accident. Maybe it's destiny revealing itself through humiliation. By evening, Amara's inbox floods with opportunities, podcast invites, TV appearances, offers from language institutes. Yet she turns them all down. She's not chasing fame. She's chasing purpose. The world might see a viral sensation, but she sees a window opening. A chance to prove that intelligence, empathy, and grace are more powerful than arrogance. That night, as she walks home through the cold Chicago streets, her reflection catches in a shop window. Behind her reflection, she sees news anchors discussing her. The waitress who humbled Ezio. A modern-day David and Goliath. She smiles faintly, almost in disbelief. At home, she scrolls through comments until one stops her. It's from a young waitress in another country. "I was treated the same way yesterday. You gave me courage not to stay silent." For Amara, that single comment means more than all the viral praise combined. That's the value she always wanted to add, the kind that changes lives quietly, one person at a time. Meanwhile, Khalil sits in his office miles away, the city lights reflecting off the glass walls of his tower. The same video plays on his massive screen, his own face frozen in arrogance, her face calm and unshaken. His jaw tightens. He can't erase what happened. But something in his expression softens, a flicker of respect, perhaps even guilt. Back in her apartment, Amara closes her laptop and whispers the truth she's finally starting to believe. The world won't remember who shouted the loudest. They'll remember who spoke the truth with grace. The next morning, a new headline appears online. Restaurant genius offered corporate consultancy role, the waitress who humbled the elite. And just like that, the story turns from viral fame to opportunity. But every opportunity comes with a cost. The question is, can Amara survive what happens when the spotlight burns brighter than ever before? The storm of fame had barely settled when the call came. Morrison's Restaurant Group, the very company where Amara waited tables, requested her presence at headquarters. At first, she thought it was a joke. But when Derek showed her the official email, she realized it was real. The company wanted her to attend a business negotiation with a Middle Eastern firm, the same corporation owned by Khalil al-Rashid. The irony hit hard. A week ago, she'd been clearing dishes for this man. Now, she was being asked to sit across from him in a boardroom. The day of the meeting, Amara stood before the mirror in a borrowed navy suit. No uniform. No name tag. Just a woman about to reclaim her place in a world that had once refused to see her. Derek's words echoed in her head. "They don't know yet, but you're exactly what they need." The corporate tower loomed like a fortress of glass and ambition. Inside, the air smelled of polished leather and silent judgment. Executives whispered as she entered. Some smiled politely, others smirked, already writing her off. She could feel their questions. A waitress? Then Khalil walked in. His composure was perfect, too perfect. The last time he'd seen her, he was the one shrinking in his chair. Now, his expression was unreadable. "Miss Williams," he greeted stiffly. "Shall we begin?" Amara met his gaze, calm and unwavering. Of course. The negotiation began with formality, financial forecasts, projections, legal jargon, but soon the cracks appeared. The same problem that had doomed previous deals returned: cultural disconnect. Misunderstandings in tone, phrasing, and protocol turned polite exchanges into quiet friction. Khalil's team struggled to interpret Morrison's business proposals. Morrison's executives failed to grasp the unspoken codes of Middle Eastern business etiquette. Derek looked at Amar. She nodded once. Then she spoke. Her voice was steady, measured. In flawless Arabic, she addressed Khalil's partners directly, acknowledging their concerns and apologizing for any previous cultural missteps. The room went silent again, this time not from shock, but from awe. Her phrasing wasn't just correct. It was respectful, layered with nuance that showed she understood more than language. She understood them. One of Khalil's partners, an older man named Ahmad, leaned forward, intrigued. "You speak beautifully," he said in Arabic. "Where did you study?" Amar smiled. "I studied humanity first," she replied. The languages came after. Even Khalil couldn't hide his surprise. He tested her, switching dialects mid-sentence, using complex idioms, cultural references only a native would know. She responded to each effortlessly, turning his challenge into conversation. What was meant to expose her instead revealed her mastery. Derek watched in disbelief as Amara transformed the energy in the room. The tension melted. For the first time in 2 years, both sides actually listened. She outlined how business misunderstandings weren't caused by incompetence but by cultural blindness, how something as simple as seating order or meeting timing could make or break a partnership. She offered solutions: cultural protocol training, communication reform, translation strategies grounded in empathy. By the time she finished, every executive at the table was silent, taking notes. Khalil's stoic expression had softened into quiet respect. When the meeting ended, Ahmad stood and extended his hand. "Your understanding goes beyond language, Miss Williams," he said warmly. "You've built a bridge where there was only distance." Khalil nodded slowly. "You have done something remarkable today," he admitted, his voice lower, humble. "Perhaps we all had something to learn." As Amara gathered her notes, she felt something powerful, not pride, not victory, but alignment. The world was finally meeting her on equal ground. Outside the glass walls, Derek caught up to her. "You just saved a multimillion-dollar deal," he said, still dazed. "Do you realize what you've done?" Amara glanced back at the boardroom where Khalil's team still lingered, replaying every word she'd said. "I didn't save a deal," she replied softly. "I reminded them that understanding people is the real business." That night, the footage from the meeting, secretly recorded by a journalist, hit social media again. The new hashtag trended instantly, #culturalgenius. But as Amara would soon learn, not everyone celebrated her success. Behind closed doors, whispers were beginning to rise in Morrison's executive offices. Jealousy, resentment, and doubt were about to test her harder than any language ever could. The following weeks felt like walking through fog, the kind that hides both opportunity and danger. Amara's success had made headlines, her name trending across the business world. Yet inside Morrison's corporate headquarters, celebration turned quickly into suspicion. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. "A waitress with a PhD?" Some executives scoffed. "She's just a lucky viral story." Others muttered darker things: diversity stunt, publicity move. At first, Amara tried to ignore them. She poured her energy into refining her cultural consultancy program. Late nights, empty coffee cups, endless research. But whispers are hard to ignore when they come with stares that last a little too long. When she entered the elevator, conversations paused mid-sentence. Emails went unanswered. She overheard laughter once. She can translate words, but can she translate success? The doubt began to creep in quietly, like a slow leak in her confidence. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was an experiment, a headline, not a leader. Even Derek's reassurance couldn't drown out the inner voice asking, "Do you really belong here?" One evening as she worked late, her phone rang. A known number. When she answered, the last voice she expected spoke, Khalil al-Rashid. Miss Williams, he began, his tone softer than she remembered. I owe you more than an apology. The silence stretched. She could hear him breathing on the other end, the weight of pride pressing down on every word. When I insulted you, he continued, I wasn't just cruel. I was afraid. Amara frowned, confused. Afraid? Yes, he said quietly. Because I saw myself in you. 15 years ago, I was washing dishes in a restaurant in Beirut. No one respected me then either. I worked my way up, and when I finally had power, I used it to protect myself from anyone who reminded me of where I came from. You did more than speak my language that day, Amara. You reminded me who I used to be. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Amara said softly, We all wear armor, Mr. Al-Rashid. Some just forget to take it off. His quiet laugh carried relief, not humor, but understanding. Then maybe it's time I did, he said. If you're ever ready to teach, I'm ready to learn. When the call ended, Amara sat still, staring at the city lights outside her office window. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. Not because of fame, but because someone who once represented her greatest humiliation had now spoken to her with respect. But the corporate battlefield wasn't finished testing her. The next morning, she entered a meeting and found her presentation replaced. Slides she had created were rebranded under another executive's name. The same people who doubted her were now trying to claim her ideas. Derek's jaw clenched as he watched. You can't let them take credit, he whispered. Amara smiled faintly. They can take the slides, she said, but they can't take the language. When it was her turn to speak, she stood, ignoring the sabotaged presentation. Without notes, without slides, she addressed the room, not in English, but in the languages of their international partners: Korean, Arabic, French, Mandarin. Each phrase perfectly tailored to the executives in attendance. The room froze, then slowly leaned forward, captivated. She spoke of global empathy, communication, and humility, how understanding others isn't weakness, but the foundation of power. By the end, the applause was thunderous. Even her harshest critics stood. And in the back of the room, Sarah Lane, Morrison's regional director, whispered to Derek, We've been blind. She's the future. That night, as Amara walked home, snow fell over Chicago's skyline like a quiet blessing. The city lights reflected off the flakes, painting everything in gold. She remembered her grandmother's words. When the world doubts you, don't argue. Just let your results speak every language they can't. She had been humiliated, doubted, and underestimated. Yet every insult became fuel. Every whisper became proof. Because she wasn't just translating languages anymore, she was translating humanity. And somewhere in another office, Khalil watched her speech replay on his laptop, his reflection shimmering against the glass. He whispered to himself, She turned my arrogance into her lesson. For Amara, redemption didn't come with applause or promotions. It came with the quiet certainty that even in a world built on power, grace still wins. But the world wasn't done testing her yet. A new challenge was about to arrive, one that would take her far beyond boardrooms, and into the global stage. 3 months later, the stakes had never been higher. Chicago's skyline shimmered under an autumn sunrise as world business leaders gathered for the International Economic Summit, a global stage where billion-dollar deals were sealed or shattered by a single sentence. This year, for the first time, Morrison's restaurant group wasn't just catering the event, they were hosting it, and the person leading cultural negotiations wasn't a CEO or a consultant. It was Amara Williams, the former waitress now serving as the company's director of international relations. Inside the grand ballroom, cameras flashed and translators whispered through earpieces. Executives from Korea, Germany, the Middle East, Brazil, and Japan filled the room, each bringing their own languages, expectations, and unspoken tensions. Derek adjusted his tie nervously. You realize the world's watching this live, right? He whispered. Amara smiled, her calm radiating in every movement. Then let's give them something worth watching. From the moment she stepped onto the stage, the energy shifted. She began the opening address in English, then switched to Korean, Arabic, and Japanese with flawless transitions. The delegates leaned in mesmerized. This wasn't translation, it was diplomacy woven through empathy. Her words weren't just understood, they were felt. But then came the test, the kind designed to break even seasoned negotiators. A sharp-tongued foreign consultant named Marcus Wellington, hired by a rival firm, stood and interrupted mid-speech. "Forgive me," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But are we seriously trusting global trade negotiations to someone whose last known qualification was waiting tables?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cameras turned. The live chat on the summit's broadcast exploded with comments. For a moment, the world held its breath, waiting for the waitress to break. Amara didn't flinch. She turned toward him, her face calm, her tone steady. "You're right," she said. "I did wait tables. That means I learned to listen when others refused to. I learned patience, respect, and the art of understanding what people mean, not just what they say." She paused, then smiled gently. "Those lessons have built more bridges than arrogance ever will." Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Marcus sat down, defeated by grace. As the day continued, Amara faced problem after problem. The German and Brazilian delegations clashed over technical terminology. The Japanese executives were insulted by a misarranged seating chart. The Middle Eastern representatives objected to the menu's inclusion of pork-based dishes. To everyone else, it looked like chaos. To Amara, it looked like translation, not of words, but of worlds. She moved from group to group, addressing each issue in their native language, blending cultural knowledge with practical diplomacy. To the Japanese, she bowed slightly and apologized for the seating error, restoring respect and harmony. To the Germans and Brazilians, she demonstrated how their technical terms described the same quality standard, just in different frameworks. And to the Middle Eastern team, she proposed a halal Korean fusion menu, turning conflict into collaboration. By the afternoon, what had started as tension evolved into something beautiful. Delegates began laughing, sharing ideas, even trading recipes. The cameras captured every moment. Social media exploded again. Hashtags #cultural fusion and #Amara method trended across continents. Even Khalil was watching from his seat at the front. Every sentence she spoke reminded him of what he had almost destroyed with one cruel word. When she finished, he rose and addressed the hall in Arabic. "There was a time I believed leadership was about commanding respect," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Today, I learned that true leadership means earning it, by understanding others." The crowd stood in ovation. The Korean CEO, Mr. Park, stepped forward and announced a joint venture, a $2.3 million cross-cultural partnership deal, the first of its kind. For Morrison's group, it meant global recognition. For Amara, it meant validation that went far beyond money. As the summit ended, the applause refused to fade. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Derek whispered beside her, "You just changed how the world sees business." Amara exhaled, her gaze drifting upward toward the chandeliers. "Not business," she said softly. "People." That night, headlines around the world told her story. From waitress to world leader, how one woman turned humiliation into harmony. But even as the world celebrated, Amara knew the story wasn't over. For her, this wasn't about glory, it was about gratitude. Because deep down, she understood one truth that no headline could capture. When you build bridges instead of walls, you don't just change minds, you change the future. Months passed since the global summit, but the world was still echoing with her name, Amara Williams, the woman who turned humiliation into hope. Her face appeared on magazine covers, her story shared in classrooms, and her methods adopted by corporations across continents. Yet behind the fame, she remained the same quiet soul who once carried a water pitcher with steady hands and unshaken dignity. Inside her new office at Morrison's international headquarters, sunlight spilled across the walls. On her desk sat 3 symbols of her journey, her PhD diploma, her corporate nameplate, and, in a small glass frame, her old restaurant badge that read server number 7. Every time she looked at it, she smiled. It reminded her where strength truly begins, not in status, but in character. That evening, she prepared for a live broadcast, one that would reach millions. The event marked the official launch of the Hidden Talents Initiative, a global program designed to identify and uplift people whose skills were overlooked because of where they worked or how they looked. Factory workers, janitors, waiters, drivers, all now had a pathway to professional recognition. Before going live, she felt a familiar presence. Her grandmother, now in her 80s, entered quietly holding a worn diplomatic briefcase. "This belonged to me when I worked at the United Nations," she said softly, placing it on the desk. "It's time it belongs to you." Amara opened it carefully. Inside lay an old UN pen set, polished silver with faint engravings of peace doves. Her grandmother smiled. "I spent my life translating politics," she whispered. "But you translated hearts." The broadcast light blinked on. Cameras focused. Across the world, millions tuned in. Amara looked directly into the lens, her voice calm, confident, and human. "A year ago," she began, "I was a waitress who people looked through, not at. Today, I lead global negotiations not because I changed who I was, but because I refused to let the world define my worth." She paused, letting the silence breathe. "There are millions of people out there just like I was, unseen, underestimated, and unheard. But I learned something: your value isn't given by others. It's built by what you choose to do when no one's watching." Images appeared on screen, clips of janitors turned logistics managers, cooks turned cultural trainers, drivers turned language interpreters, all graduates of the Hidden Talents Initiative. Each face told a story of transformation. Amara's tone deepened, filled with quiet power. "If you're watching this, I want you to do 3 things. First, think about someone in your life who's been underestimated. Maybe it's a coworker, a classmate, or even you. Reach out. Tell them you see their potential. Second, share this story. Let's remind the world that greatness doesn't wear uniforms or titles. And third, support the Hidden Talents Initiative. Every contribution builds a bridge for someone still stuck behind the wall of doubt." She leaned slightly closer to the camera, eyes unwavering. Because potential doesn't shout. It whispers. And sometimes all it needs is for someone to finally listen. The live chat exploded with comments, tears, applause, and stories from people around the world. A janitor from New Delhi. A housekeeper from Mexico. A factory worker from Detroit. All writing the same sentence: "I feel seen." As the broadcast ended, Amara closed her laptop and turned toward her grandmother, who watched with pride shimmering in her eyes. "You did it, Sherry," she whispered. "You built bridges I never could." Amara smiled through quiet tears. "No, Grandma," she replied. "We built them together." The next day, news outlets declared her initiative a movement of empathy. The Smithsonian requested her server number 7 badge for a cultural exhibit titled, "From Invisible to Indispensable." And the mayor of Chicago officially declared Hidden Talents Day, encouraging employers to look beyond resumes, to look at human potential. As the sun set that evening, Amara stood by her window overlooking the city, a city she once served, now serving her story to the world. She whispered the words that defined her journey. Never underestimate quiet people. They're the ones rewriting the world in silence. And for every viewer who watched till the end, the message lingered long after the screen went dark, a call to empathy, to awareness, to action. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Hit like, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more real stories of hidden strength and human value. Remember, greatness isn't rare. It's just waiting to be seen.